chance to give an insight, give a creative opinion, give educate people. Now, I need to say this. The Indian population doesn't understand the difference between election, to say parliamentary elections, vis-a-vis the state legislatures. That is not the case. Most of the time, it's also shocking. Most of the literates won't be voting on the voting day. They will not be voting in the elections at all. It is the others, what we call them as, villagers, or for that matter, not so highly educated. They are the ones who participate in the election. Now, if we are to say people don't, we Indians, or we Indians present, or Indian people on the whole, they do not understand what is the difference between parliamentary election and what is the difference between election. I am afraid we are disrespecting our sitting in an ivory tower to make a statement that population of this country do not understand the difference between parliamentary election and state election. We are disrespecting our own country. We are definitely smart enough to or educated enough to understand the difference between the parliamentary elections and the state elections, how to vote for the parliamentary legislation and how to vote for the state legislation, what is the national issue and what are the local issues. All these things definitely people are know of the difference between these two elections. So, difference. Now it's time for us to address these aspects, how to just take this country forward by understanding the narratives on both the sides and selecting the best of what is really required. And I stop at this insofar as my insight or my views on this aspect. If I'm permitted, sir, can I take questions from the public so that let it be more interactive, so that I can also be one among you or be a part of you in this thought process? Do we have? Please. So with this, I will have to make way for the other interests and interests so that we have this opportunity to hear what is there in store and try to understand further as to what needs to be understood on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your enriching and inspiring address. Moving ahead, I invite Sri Dr. T.R. Subramaniam, Dean, School of Legal Studies, CMR University, Bangalore, to share his insights. Sir, please.
Respected teachers and dear students. Today is the day wherein long ago, in the year 1949, the draft Constitution of India was adopted. When the draft Constitution of India was adopted, many people thought we are entering into a new legal regime. Till 1949, we did not have a constitutional governance. Prior to 1949, we were governed by a Government of India Act, legislated by the British and approved by the Parliament of the State of India. So the Constitution was adopted. There were several heads, several intelligent minds, several statesmen, several scholars who participated. You might be knowing it is the Cabinet of the State of Great Britain permitted us to have a constitution of our own. So at that time we thought of appointing what we call as a committee to draft the constitution. And in this committee to draft the constitution, we had as many as 299 members. Don't be under the impression that we had only 50 members or 60 members. 219 members sat in the Central Hall of Parliament in separate committees. Not only they sat in separate committees, there are as many as 18 committees which are constituted. Of the 18 committees which are constituted, 13 of them stand on. I can just make a mention before I start and speak about the topic, and a discussion that has taken place regarding election under the Constituent Assembly. One member happened to be the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution. And he was none but Baba Sahib Ambedkar. And he became the first person of law and justice in independent India. Kudos to the great man. He was a scholar not only in the area of sociology, but a scholar in the field of economics, and an SJD and a doctor of laws from the University of Columbia, United States. Such was the knowledge which he had. So he was a DSc from the University of London. And the topic of research was, remember, Indian rupee, the status and the drawbacks in the vicinity, and for which he got a PhD. And then he got his PhD from the University of Columbia, as I just mentioned. And he was a social reformer as well. We are very proud because in those days he was elected as a chairman because of his knowledge, because of his level, and because of his understanding of the concept of rights as well as duties. Then there was another person by name B.N. Rao, Venegal Nursing Rao. Venegal Nursing Rao was appointed as the officer in charge of the drafting committee. He was the one who was taking care of everything. And there were several other members who may be knowing, you must have read, and it is available, you must have come in the newspapers today. We have Masari Kavalani, we have Meenu Masani, we have Hundi Yusuf Kamat. How many of them have? Of the 299 members, these are all the top people who associated in drafting the Constitution. The drafting was complete. But then during the course of drafting, the Government of India issued a circular. And this circular indicated that we should have an office of franchise. And an office of franchise, in order to be established, you should have a man with grit. And it was Venegal Nursing Rao who was appointed as the chairman of this office. And he was appointed as the chairman. He took Mr. Mukherjee as his secretary, and later he became the vice secretary of the government then, in 1946. They first decided that he thought he would have his place to sit. Later, the office was provided, and then the discussion started taking place. So now we come to the point. Remember, first and foremost, they have to discuss what to be included. And in order to be included, they should know what should be the nature of the Constitution as well. For this purpose, Venegal Nursing Rao, on 13th of December 1946, issued a circular. And this circular was issued and it was considered as a model. And how the draft committee should proceed. What are the issues that are to be discussed? What are the issues which are totally irrelevant for purpose of discussion? And based on the strength of that, the 2-year, 11 months discussion has taken place. Now, before submitting this, he had visited along with the committee headed by Mr. Pradhan. And along with Pradhan, there was a mission, then was a Muslim, and there was another person, William Subramanian. All of them stayed the state of the United States first. And they took appointment with the President of the State of the United States, as well as the Chief Justice, Mr. Frankfurter. Frankfurter, being the Chief Justice of the State of the United States, gave one full session to the man. And in the full session we discussed, and he gave several his opinions. And he did not say that it should be imposed on the Constitution, never. And then that opinion was taken into consideration. And after some time, Justice McWhorter had an opportunity to meet G.S. Vajpayee, who was Chief Secretary to the Ministry of Physical Affairs. So when he met him, he just mentioned to him, I had a discussion with a great man, Mr. Narendra. If ever I am asked to appoint a just to the Supreme Court of the United States as President, I will definitely recommend Mr. Narendra Rao to the Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. Such was the understanding. Now you may ask me what exactly are the reasons. The reasons are this: because he was the one who was responsible in drafting the 1935 Parliament of India Act. And from 1935 till this day, remember that the Constitution was formed, he was there. Now thereafter they went to Canada, they went to Ireland, and thereafter they went to the United Kingdom. Having gone there, they understood considerably how these constitutions work. But then they did not imitate any of the constitutions which they have studied abroad. Their nature, structure, their functioning, they did not abroad. They brought in independence. See, we did not have adopted a position of a president like the King of England. The King of England is not answerable to him. And of course there is no responsibility. A man who believes only in protocols and conventions, and these protocols, if he is refused to be accepted, is gone with the wind. Such thing we did not do. We accepted an executive, and office of executive is, remember, should get elected by way of election once in 5 years. So the office of president is or is an elected office under the Constitution of India. This is not the state of India. So Prime Minister should get elected. And once in 5 years he should go to the people and fight. Fight the election and then get back. If he loses, someone else will fight. And you have the independence of the region, which is, remember, is empowered to question any law which is being made by the Parliament. Now, as they came back and started sitting in the office of franchise, one fine morning, Pandit Nehru telephones Veneral Narasimha. When he telephoned Veneral Narasimha, he just asked, now you have prepared the first voter list. The first voter list was prepared with great difficulty with the assistance of Mr. Padmanabhan Mukherjee and Veneral Narasimha and several others, because the office of franchise was created there and there. And at that time, remember, 173 million eligible voters were there as of 1949. That means 17.3 crores of eligible voters. So immediately he said, you have what we call as the list of voters and conduct the elections, proceed further. Then he meets the President, Rajendra Prasad. Having met President Rajendra Prasad, he simply tells him, elections cannot be held like that. If you want to have election, again there should be, remember, electoral roll, new electoral roll has to be prepared. And then they prepared a new electoral roll. That was the sense which was given. So new electoral roll was prepared, remember, just in 1 year, 2 months or so. And the new electoral roll we went for election. And election began somewhere in the month of October, and it came to an end in the month of February. The very purpose of telling this, if elections were held in the month of started in the month of October, coming to an end in the month of February, in those days it almost took another 4 to 5 months. And even now the elections are taking place, remember, again at least 2 to 3 months. Even 1 month it was not held in this election. It has taken place almost, remember, 45 to 50 days. So whether a country like India, for a country like India, an election of this nature is affordable. Now, one of the scholars has pointed out, if I am wrong, Professor Naveen will correct me, we are losing as much as 1.5 of our GDP, only by conducting elections. The state of Pakistan is losing its GDP by 6% because of corruption. Should we lose 1.5% of our GDP because of election? No doubt elections are held every time. Elections you find, remember, forget the lower, Panchayat elections you have. Then you have the Taluk board elections you have. Then you have Villa Parishad elections you have. Then you have the municipal corporations election you have. Then thereafterwards you have the corporation elections. And all these elections along with the state assembly elections. You think of the expenditure which is incurred and you think of the work that is being put. See, you will come to know during this year, between June to September or October, how many classes in the lower schools are being abandoned by way of declaring holidays because of it? And if you compare this, it is almost in the last 3.5 months, remember more than 1.5 months is holiday only. And you take into consideration the Malnad area, almost 2 months to 2.5 months there are no classes. And when the election is declared, it is the responsibility of everybody, starting from the village accountant to the deputy commissioner to the chief secretary, including the divisional commissioner. All of them are in elections. Could this be possible? Could this be manageable? A country like India, which is still in the development stage, not yet become a developed state, will be in a position to take up the responsibility. These are all hard facts which everyone should understand. There are instances wherein you can say we are living in a federalism. In a federal structure, remember the federal member has independence and elections can be held any time. But then, how much of workload is being exhausted for preparing the new electoral roll? As sir has pointed out, remember every election, every electoral. That is why the central government was proposing to have once in 5 years. I think I request Mr. Naveen to give a few ideas relating to what is the suggestion that is being given in the gap period. The elections, remember, once in 2 years, the government will remain there for 3 years. What will happen to that? For that also they have given the remedy. So this is ultimately for the benefit of everyone. We should stop spending money on these things. Because it leads to a kind of anarchy. There is no stability. There will not be peace of mind. Everyone will be looking at the speeches. And the speeches at times it is hatred. And it diverts the attention of other people. That is why what was suggested by them is a good idea. And it was recommended by almost the best of brains there. And remember, I was just telling somebody the other day, when he was asked to speak. Suppose, for example, if you want to have a new constitution, it is hypothetical. Don't take it simple. So, new constitution, and if you want a new, what we call as the committee, to draft the constitution, whether they will come to consensus, there will not be consensus. The result, we cannot have a constitution. That is the situation we have this year. And in this situation is because of the elections. Every time election, every time there is election, every time is, I don't want to say anything, please stop it this, because it doesn't look nice to speak ill of any one of us. Because they want to fight, and when they fight, these are things which come to the fore naturally. And it aggravates the thinking capability of an individual who is a perfect citizen of this country. In addition to this, I just wanted to bring home a few of the facts that has occurred. As sir has pointed out, till 1967, everything was smooth. Election was taking place 1952, then 57, then 62, then 67. Till then it was fine, but the problem came in Bihar. And when the problem came in Bihar, remember, if I am right, in 9 months, there were 2 elections. Whether any country can afford to have a general election in 9 months? It's the basic question. Remember, it's a food for thought. You have to think of it. What is the expenditure? How many teachers from village accountants, as I mentioned to you, divisional commissioner, participating in the process? What about the security? Police personnel will have sleepless nights. And once the election is over, they have to guard the ballots. And they require special security. And who is going to pay? It is we. The common taxpayer is paying the money. That is why you have it once and once for all, and for 5 years concentrate on your academic activities, your progress, your prosperity. Concentrate on these things and make the country progress and go beyond. That is the reason it is being said. Now there are other instances as well. See, for example, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, in 1996, he was a candidate for Prime Ministership. When the matter was put to vote, he lost his for one vote. And who is this person? Who voted against him is one man. One man happened to be a member of the parliament, and he was simultaneously elected member in the Odisha Assembly. And he was the cabinet minister as well. Now, as per the rules established, we are elected at a later stage as a member of a house in the state assembly. We are not supposed to take part in the regular meetings or elections in the parliament or any other thing. That man comes and votes against the government and the government falls. These are certain things which are being maintained. And if it is not done, we can speak enough. Remember, things will continue and will keep continuing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your enlightening perspective. As we move towards the concluding part of today's Constitution Day program, I now invite Youth for One Nation One Election State Convener Karnataka, Shri K.S. Navin, to deliver his address. Sir, please.
Hello, Namaskara. Very good morning to all of you. Firstly, I'd like to thank the management of KLE Law College for having given this opportunity on this very important occasion, the Constitution Day, to have this event on One Nation, One Election. Dignitaries on the dais, the chief guest, Subramania sir, Rajshekhar sir, Principal Shri Mallikarjuna sir, Coordinator Shri Hiremat sir, faculty members, and my dear students of KLE Law College. Kannada English general ಮಾತಾಡೋದು ನಡೆಯುತ್ತಾ? There's a lot of insight which has already been provided by Shri Rajshekhar sir and Shri Subramania sir. I would like to speak few things which are more in terms of numbers, which relate to One Nation, One Election. Why is that this whole concept of One Nation, One Election has come into forefront, and today across the country, why especially law schools, school of journalism, and society at large, thinkers, key influencers, academicians, list of these such class of people, and also in class of mass voters, this subject of One Nation, One Election is being discussed and debated, and trying to kind of gather opinion, what we get from the society. One Nation, One Election is nothing new, as earlier speakers have said. Our country, when it started, we had our general elections happening for both parliament as well as assemblies, both were happening together. That continued for a period of almost 4 general elections happened in the same system. Post 1967, the Article 356, which is a power that is rests with the union government to dismiss legislative assemblies was invoked in the state of Bihar. And that is when the first assembly election happened outside of the general election. You'll be surprised to know that 84 times Article 356 has been invoked in our country. 84 times for various reasons. And one of the reasons and one of the very funniest reasons one state government was dismissed was because back then president of a party had traveled to Kerala from New Delhi. So when that president of a political party landed there, the then chief minister of state of Kerala did not come to welcome her. So that the leadership, the moment she went back to Delhi, it was advised to the Union Cabinet that this state government needs to be dismissed, and that state government got dismissed immediately. That is the kind of scenarios we have gone through in our country. So what happens when country goes through continuous process of elections? Let me ask you a question. How many of you have voted? Whatever election it could be, how many of you voted? Please raise your hands. Okay. Almost half of you have voted. Okay, put your hands down. How many of you have registered for your votes? I mean, those who are not voted, have you registered for voting? Have you enrolled your name for voting? You have. I guess all of you are cross-checking, right? So you are eligible voters. So few of you have not voted, probably you will go out and vote sometime soon or later, whenever there is an election that gets declared. So, technically, a person living like in the city of Bangalore, we vote 3 elections over a period of 5 years. One is for Bangalore City Corporation, which is now Greater Bangalore GBA. Other one is for assembly, which is legislative assembly, which is for government of Karnataka, where we choose the government, and then of course the national elections. Somebody who lives in countryside, somebody who lives in a village, he votes for 6 times, 5 times. Yes, 5 times. So technically he votes every year, and you vote once every 1.5 years. So the whole concept of going out to vote to a voting booth is that you need to prepare yourself. You need to identify where is your voting booth, you need to identify where is your voting roll number, and you need to go and stand in a queue to vote for that particular election. That is what is actually you do when you have to exercise your right, which is one of our fundamental rights. The Constitution has given us all fundamental rights, and voting is one of the fundamental rights for the citizens of our country. So what happens in a place like Bangalore? Because people are so averse that there is constant elections happening year after year, they think it really doesn't matter whether I go vote or doesn't vote. I mean, somebody is going to win, and some association of people is going to get formed any which way. So why should I really vote? My vote matters at all. So if you look at the voting percentage in a city like Bangalore, it is a very dismal 50-55%, sometimes it's 40%, 42%. So that means voters are not really keen to go and vote because there's constant election which is forced upon them. So the voter, he thinks really, I have to go and vote, and I have a lot of other things to do. And should I spend my entire day in identifying where I need to go and where I need to vote and all that? So whether I skip voting. That is the reason why there is a very, very small percentage of voters who vote and vote. So if there is 40% of the people voting, And somebody who gets 21% becomes an elected representative, and he will be the one who will be governing upon all the civic issues and all the, as a representative, he will be sitting in the Vidhan Sabha. So what happened? This thought of one nation, one election didn't come from any political party. It's not one political party or one leadership or one group of people who thought this country needs one nation, one election. In fact, in the year 1981, the Chief Election Commissioner wrote to the President of India, wrote to the Prime Minister of India, saying that as Election Commissioner, as Election Commission, we can't conduct so many elections at different levels, at different times. It is increasingly difficult for us to mobilize staff, mobilize human resource, mobilize personnel who can run the election. So kindly come up with a solution where we complete this process of election all at one go, so that we are done with the process of election and people can concentrate on other things. I'll just tell you how many people get involved in the election. The day the Election Commission decides, let us create new voter polls, voter list. That job is assigned to the Deputy Commissioner. The Deputy Commissioner then assigns it to the Tahsildar. Then the Tahsildar assigns it to the Education Department. The Education Department then assigns it to its teachers. Then the teachers go house to house. There is something called BLO, block level officer, who is responsible to enroll each and every eligible voter. Normally the BLOs are all teachers, who is a government teacher in that particular area. Once that is done, then comes the second thing of formulating all these into and making it a voter roll. Like, okay, this constituency has this many voters. And then it gets published for objections. People have to go through and say, oh, my name is not there, please add my name. And somebody will say, oh, this person is dead, his name is still there, can you delete this person's name? And then that whole process happens. Once all that is done, the final voter roll is issued. Imagine when? Just a week before the voting day. You have an opportunity to add your name just before a week. This will be a supplementary list of voters which will be added to the voter list. So till the last minute, this whole exercise of who is a voter, who is not the voter, whose name should be there, whose name shouldn't be there, all this juggling will be going on. And then once the election date is announced, then comes the security. Whenever the election happens, because there will be a lot of mob, there will be crowd, there will be a lot of tension, there will be a lot of campaigning, there will be, slangering, there will be slogan shouting, and people will be on the street campaigning for their political parties and candidates. So you need security, you need protection. So can you afford to have your just normal policemen to come and control all this mob? So people, when they gather in thousands, they gather in lakhs whenever there is an election. If there is a big national event coming, there will be a crowd which will be lakh and a half, 2 lakhs, 5 lakhs. So you can't manage that big a crowd with a small number of policemen. So that's when the CRPF will come into fold. CRPF will come into the picture. That is when the military, paramilitary will come in. Your entire police department will be focusing on this election rallies that's happening. So the entire police mechanism, entire paramilitary mechanism gets into this election. Then there is somebody called election officers. The election officers are usually the IAS officers, the so-called deputy commissioners or commissioners, or whoever is the highest level of the bureaucratic setup. They can't perform in their own state. If there is an election happening in Karnataka, the bureaucrat has to come from Maharashtra, or the bureaucrat has to come from Gujarat, or the bureaucrat has to come from Tamil Nadu to run the election here, because the Karnataka cadre IAS officers could be biased about a political party. The election commission has made a law which says no local officer should run the election here, so an outside officer will come. So what will he do? He'll put leave for 60 days in the post that he is working there, and he'll come and sit in Karnataka to run the election. Likewise, a Karnataka cadre officer will have to go to other states. So imagine you have some work in a deputy commissioner's office or any secretariat level office. You go and give the application, the person will say, sir, madam, the officer is on leave or he has gone to the election duty, so he'll be back only after 2 months. You please come back after 2 months. Then what happens? There's so much of printing. The paper that goes as waste because every 1.5 year, every year you do election. There's so much campaign material that goes. You need to print lakhs and lakhs and lakhs and tons of sheets of paper that get printed because they need to give information. They need to print voter rolls. They need to give the pamphlets. They need to put posters. Everything they need to do. And how much of plastic that goes to be used in the election? You see all the ugly posters which is printed on huge plastic papers and stuck everywhere whenever there is election happening. What happens after that election day? It all goes into trash. So, any election, if you look at it, is complete waste of resource because you are doing the same act year after year, year after year, year after year, and the same people to do it. And the kind of money that goes into all of this is huge, it's unimaginable. The resources the candidate needs to mobilize, the resources the political party needs to mobilize, the money they spend on elections is unthinkable and unimaginable. So once this recommendation of the Chief Election Commissioner for conducting elections and one go, obviously the political leadership thinks of each party thinks very differently. From 1981 to almost till last 3 years, the whole idea of this was kept in abeyance. But then Ramnath Kovindji's committee was set up, as Sri Rajshekharji was saying. There was a committee which was set up in the leadership of former president of our country. And he was given the task, go out, go to the people, go to all these, especially the former Supreme Court judges, former High Court judges, Chief Justice, election commissioners, the cream of the society which actually thinks for the sake of the country. They went ahead, they met, they interviewed, they discussed, they debated, and they came back with the report. And then 87% of the people of this country who were in this action of doing elections and passing judgments and such things, 87% of them said, yes, our country needs one nation, one election. An 18,000-page report was submitted to the Government of India. And once the report was tabled, the Cabinet discussed it, and in session of Parliament, monsoon session of 2024, December last year, a bill was introduced in the Parliament that should be adopt this motion of one nation, one election for our diverse country. Once the bill was tabled, it was taken up for debate. Of course, the opposition party opposes. Whatever the ruling party proposes, the opposition party opposes. There was opposition who said, no, there will be a lot of injustice done to the regional parties. If the one nation, one election happens, all the benefit, all the fruit of this process will go to the national parties because all regional parties will get sidelined. So then it was put into JPC, Joint Parliamentary Committee. It's headed by Mr. P. Chowdhury. He's a very, very senior politician and a former minister and a member of parliament from Rajasthan. So now this JPC is actually meeting once in 2 weeks, trying to get the feedback from all, cross section of the society and getting a view on what our country, what the people of this country want. I'll conclude my talk by, speaking for a couple of more minutes. One nation, one election is a process that's getting adopted not for the sake of people who have already gone past. It's for our future. As Subramanian was saying, the direct impact on the GDP of our country is about 1.5%, which translates to 4.5 lakh crore. 4.5 lakh crore worth of GDP money, if you can, if you put a number to it, the 1.5%, it's at 4.5 lakh crore. That is the kind of money that's getting wasted because we go in election mode every year, state after state, state after state, state after state. What are we spending? The last parliament election, what we did, our government has spent 1 lakh crore to conduct this election. We have spent 1 lakh crore. And where is that money coming from? That money is coming from you and me. We are the one who are contributing that. It's the taxpayers' money that we are spending. So, last year the government spent about 1 lakh crore on conducting elections across the country. And just by adopting this one nation, one election, the cost cutting in terms of whatever the money that gets saved is more than about 25,000 crore. All elections will happen together. Local body elections, which is a state subject, has to be done within 100 days. As Rajsekar sir was saying, the entire exercise has to get over in 90 to 100 days. So 4 years, 9 months, there will be governance. There won't be elections. There won't be model code of conduct. In the last 75 years, we have lost 25 years in model code of conduct, where the government was in policy paralysis, where the system was in policy paralysis, where the governments were not able to be in position to take any decision because the model code of conduct was in place. So if you imagine a country which is a 75-year-old country after getting our independence, waste about 25 years on just doing elections year after year, going to people, and especially politicians like me. For me, I can't discharge my duty as a legislator. Every time there's an election, I need to go to people's house, catch their feet, request their vote. And when do I discharge my role as a legislator? When do I sit and think about what is good for my state? So, the entire system goes into paralysis. With all of these things factors put together, the reason why we are doing it in law colleges, I'll give you an interesting thought because you are also a dean of you come from legal background, Rajsekar also comes from legal background. When we got our elected government, the first elected government, more than 70% of our parliamentarians were lawyers. They were all somebody like you, they passed law, they came into social service and they became elected representatives. And traditionally, whether it is assembly houses or parliament houses, it's always been, highly represented by lawyers. Why? Because lawyers are one community which works, society is the laboratory. For a scientist, for an engineer, the laboratory is a physical lab. But for a lawyer, the society is a laboratory. So this country has always voted for a lawyer to be the leader. So if you look at Vallabhbhai Patel, he is a lawyer. Mahatma Gandhi is a lawyer. Those who have ruled us, they are all lawyers because they understand the pulse of the people. They understand the society's needs. They understand what is good, what is not good, what is right, what is wrong. But unfortunately, what has happened, today the number has come to 20%. The lawmakers, the percentage of lawyers who used to be around 70 plus are now come to 20% because this whole dynamics of election conducting has become so, corrupt, so financially dependent. I mean, good person hesitates to come into politics. Now that the 33% women's reservation bill has passed, I hope one day somebody sitting in the audience should be sitting in the Parliament House and then they should become an MP or then they should become a legislator in the Assembly and somebody should represent because our country is such a strong and such a vibrant and such a potential youth power nation in the whole world. Everybody is looking towards India. Today is India's fourth largest economy. Going forward, as our Prime Minister hopes, by 2047, we will be the world's #1 economic superpower, and that is what we are going to do with all of you coming together to work for the sake of the country. And I thank you so much, sir, for giving this wonderful opportunity to our students. Very involved and very keenly focused students for here in Saudi today. ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಮಾತನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಮುಕ್ತಾಯ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಇವತ್ತು ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ದಿನಾಚರಣೆ ನಾವು ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ಪೀಠಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಓದಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ಇಡೀ ವಿಶ್ವದಲ್ಲೇ ಅತ್ಯಂತ ಶಕ್ತಿಯುತ ಸುಭದ್ರವಾದ ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಇದೆ ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಭಾರತ ದೇಶದ ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬಹಳ ನಾವು ಹೆಮ್ಮೆಯಿಂದ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವೆ. ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ಅಪಾಯದಲ್ಲಿದೆ, ಸಂವಿಧಾನಕ್ಕೆ ತೊಂದರೆ ಇದೆ ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಮಾತುಗಳು ಬಂದ್ರೆ ಕೇವಲ ರಾಜಕೀಯ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನವಾಗಿರುವಂತ ಮಾತುಗಳು ಅಷ್ಟೇ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಭಾರತ ದೇಶದ ಏನು ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ನಿರ್ಮಾತೃಗಳು ಅಂತ ನಾವು ಕರಿತೀವಿ, ಅವ್ರು ಇದನ್ನು ಬಹಳ ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರೆಸಿಡೆನ್ಷಿಯಲ್ ಪವರ್ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಮೆರಿಕ ಅಧ್ಯಕ್ಷರು ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ಡರ್ನ ಅವ್ರು ನಾಳೆ ಬೆಳಗ್ಗೆ ಏನಾದ್ರು ಇದು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಎಕ್ಸಿಕ್ಯೂಟಿವ್ ಆರ್ಡರ್ನ ಸೈನ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಕಾನೂನು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರೈಮ್ ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟರ್ is superior, cabinet is superior to the prime minister, parliament is more superior to the cabinet. So whatever has to happen has to go through the process. ಈ ಪ್ರಾಸೆಸ್ ಅಡಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಅದು ಕಾನೂನಾಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶದ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಗಟ್ಟಿಯಾದಂತಹ ಸಂವಿಧಾನವನ್ನು ನಾವು ಪಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೇವೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಾನಿವತ್ತು ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಹೇಳುವಂಥದ್ದು ಏನು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಈ ರಾಜಕಾರಣ ಅನ್ನೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಶೈಲವೇ ಹಾಕ್ಬೇಡಿ. ಇದು ಯಾವುದೋ ಒಳ್ಳೆ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಇದು ತುಂಬಾ ಕೆಟ್ಟ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರ, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕೆಟ್ಟವರಷ್ಟೇ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಮಾನಸಿಕತೆಯಿಂದ ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಬಂದು ನಾನು ಕೂಡ ಆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಆಗಿ ಇದರೊಳಗಡೆ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಸಿಪೇಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಈ ಎಂಟೈರ್ ಡೆಮೋಕ್ರೆಟಿಕ್ ಸೆಟಪ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಕೂಡ ಕೀ ಇನ್ಫ್ಲೂಯೆನ್ಸರ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಪಾತ್ರವನ್ನ ಮುಂದಿನ ಪೀಳಿಗೆ ನೀವೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಆಗ ಮಾತ್ರ ನಿಜವಾಗ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶ ತನ್ನ ಗುರಿಯತ್ತ ಸಾಗೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಹೆಜ್ಜೆಗಳನ್ನು ಇಡಕ್ಕೆ ಸಾಧ್ಯ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅನ್ನುವಂತ ಮಾತನ್ನು ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಳಿ ನಿಮ್ಮೆಲ್ಲರೂ ಕೂಡ ಮತ್ತೊಮ್ಮೆ ಸಂವಿಧಾನ ದಿವಸದ ಶುಭಾಶಯ ಮಾತಾಡುತ್ತಾರೆ.
Thank you, sir, for your meaningful and thoughtful words. We will now open the floor. For a brief interactive Q&A session. Both students and faculty members are welcome to pose their questions for our esteemed dignitaries. Please raise your hand. A microphone will be provided for your convenience.
I agree very well that it saves the money of taxpayers, it reduces the repeated disruption in the governance, and also the burden on the executory and the police employment. But what if the government fails midterm? Like, will you dissolve the entire country's governance, or will you held election for the whole country? Or will you have election for a particular state, and it will at the end defeat the whole concept of one nation and one election? And the second question I have is, will it be guaranteed that the state issues will be addressed and will it get the proper attention despite the national issues dominating the same ballot paper of one nation, one election? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. I'll answer for both these questions separately. The first question, what is asked was whether the term of the assembly or the parliament, if there is any, governments falling because of lack of majority or any constitutional issues happen and then the government needs to go. The provision that which has currently been made is if for any reason, if there is lack of majority or for some other reason if the government has to go, then the election may happen for the balance. If there is a government which has formed for say 2 years, the government falls. And then the election, if it ever has to happen, it will only happen for the balance 3 years. It will not be for the full term. So technically, all states, including the national government, has to stick to this calendar of 5 years. So by doing this, the other thing that they are trying to bring in is there will be stability. There won't be options for many reasons for like maybe a small group of legislators defect and then the government falls. So that seriousness will come in. If you have to go to the elections again, the legislator or the parliament member will also think, should I really risk this to go for one more election? So the balance period of 2 years. So then what will happen is then there will be some kind of a realignment or some kind of a, acceptance of things that's going to happen. And then the government is going to run smoothly. That is one thing. The second question you asked was whether the impact of national issues will overrule the state issues. See, the voter of this country is very smart. If you look at, there are certain states which are actually going with the national election. Say for the state of Tamil Nadu, state of Odisha, state of Andhra Pradesh, are still going with our national elections calendar. If you see, the same state has voted for a completely different party for the state governance, for assembly. But they have voted for a national government totally different. So the voter is actually well aware, matured enough to understand what is at need for the state, what is the need for the country. So this whole idea of voters getting clouded with okay, the entire issue is going to be national based and our regional issues are going to die down is not a cause for
Small addition. Very valid question, Madam, you asked. The high-level committee has addressed this issue. So I just had an occasion, they have made a recommendation. Both the election subsequently for 2029 is the date on which it is sought to be when one nation, one election is to start. The recommendation made by COVID committee is for election for 2025, it should be for a period of 4 years. For 2029 for 3 years, 2029 for 2 years, 2028 for 1 year. These are all the elections which will be for a truncated period. We should try to understand this is a one-time process for the purpose of synchronizing the whole electoral process. One-time synchronization process has to happen, and that recommendation is definitely made by the committee. And now that lot needs to be seen, we have to see whether how exactly this gets accepted by all of us in the constitutional amendment which is now to be accepted.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the time and efforts that have spent with
has come today. Before I start my question, I will quote former Chief Election Commissioner S.Y. Qureshi. The need for about 40 lakh additional electronic voting machines to hold polls simultaneously poses significant financial and logistical hurdles. Sir, to the first honorable speaker, the simultaneous elections broke down post the 1951 to 1967 because it was not feasible in a diverse polity which is of India. Let us consider that this bill passes, 129 constitutional amendment is done. In 2019, sir, Jharkhand elections were conducted in 5 phases. 2021 West Bengal elections were conducted in 8 phases. It took 11 days to pull the voter data. How would the same election commission pull off the behemoth scheme that is one nation, one election? Sir, to the second and third honorable speakers. Sir, India's GDP in 2019 and 20 was approximately 203 lakh crores, and including parties, candidates, and logistics. 60,000 crores for the 2019 Lok Sabha election. This was a report from Center for Media Studies. It was titled Coal Expenditure 2019 report. So even if you assume all state elections in that cycle add another 50,000 to 60,000 crores, the absolute maximum annualized election expenditure is 1.2 to 1.3 lakh crore every 5 years. This would be 25,000 crores per year, and the percentage of GDP per year would be 0.12%. So even if we agree the 1.5 lakh argument, even that would be 0.14% of the GDP according to 2019 and 20. Sir, to the speaker, Honorable Speaker 3, sir, would you address voter fatigue as well? That would be it.
Let's not dwell on this. The committee has addressed these aspects of the matter. The fuel, which will be the tank, he will always be on the page of the journey. Supposing if I travel to Mysore, I ensure the right kind of fuel is there for the right kind of journey. Now the question goes is the preparations and the cost for the electoral missions and the like. Now, first let the legislation be there in the form of amendment being accepted. Once that's done, our country is strong enough to have $4 billion economy, which our country is now present. The country is definitely equipped with that kind, providing that kind of infrastructure to accomplish the whole process of the election. Now, to just design the example of 2019 and all of the kind of challenges, now the community has addressed the financial strength of our country. This is positive. Now, one thing that we need to add in this occasion for this August 129th Constitution Amendment, there is no legal hurdles. The only hurdle the committee has said is the political hurdle, and that hurdle needs to be absorbed and be thought of taken care how that could be sort of addressed. I don't want to say eradicated, I would say how political hurdle needs to be addressed. Let's give it a try. Let's give it a try. If it doesn't work, definitely we can be rolled back. Nothing wrong in trying.
Sir, I agree. But there is a reason that in 1960s it broke down. It broke down because local issues get overshadowed by national issues, and elections are the time that we can claim accountability from our leaders. If this is carried out, it will reach the same fate that during 1960s the local leadership, the local participation there, voter fatigue, sir. So we are asking people to go vote for Lok Sabha elections. state elections and local body elections. So technically it is not even one nation, one election. Because local body elections are, according to the report, are to be conducted within the 100 days of the Lok Sabha and the state elections.
Yeah, we're done. As a Latino question itself, madam, like, okay, we are done with the whole selection process. So, for a 1 year, all that the same investment is 6 period to think the process is done, and then the rest of the period is addressed to the governments.
I'll just answer one question really asked. So, what about electronic voting machines? Electronic voting machines are like a one-time cost, which has to go into create whatever is the one-time asset that's going to get created, and then it's going to be there. But right now, what is happening is the election voting machine, the electronic voting machines are actually moving from state to state. So whenever there is election, the election commission writes for the requirement of election voting machines, and then that gets shipped. So this whole process of having our own, every state has their own election voting, electronic voting machines. Full switch, and it's done and tested for one time. So there's a one-time cost to it, and once it's done, it's complete. The other thing is about the GDP thing that you mentioned is about 60,000 crores was the report that you read, and the next election of 2024 is about 120,000. See, that is the direct expenditure. We not calculate the indirect expenditure that goes in when these elections happen. The amount of money political parties, if you read the election commission allows certain amount of money per candidate to be spent during the election, whether it is a MP candidate or MLA candidate. And imagine the number of candidates contesting across the country for MLA elections and MP elections. The amount per MLA is about 25 lakhs minimum. So that is what is allowed by the election commission. So you calculate it the number of participants whoever is going to contest. That is the amount of money that goes into the electioneering spending. And about the GDP, which I said is about 1.5%, is the direct effect on the policy paralysis I mentioned. The decision making gets postponed. Suppose there is a decision, there is a bill that has to go through related to something related to industrial policy or investment policy or something our country needs to acquire. Then the whole process gets stalled by 6 months, and then that directly impacting our revenue system, revenue mechanism. Or if you see, right now, just recently we went and with a war with Pakistan called Operation Sindhu. When there is a situation where the country is going into, some kind of conflict, there is an election happening. What would be the situation when you have to face certain challenges? So this whole idea of having everything happening together is a participation by both. The voters also have to be very participative and say, okay, now we have got this opportunity, within 100 days we will finish all our elections, we will go ahead with our daily life. We will not worry about elections. We will let the governance to be done by our elected parties. If that happens, the voter fatigue will also disappear, and the governance will also be very smooth, and it will be very much on time.
Another question was not posed to me. I would like to intervene for the reason, first of all, I am very happy to receive this question because they are my questions too. That's the reason number one. But I have answers for my question which I will be sharing with you in a way. The second reason why I am happy is it's none other than Professor Subramania who would be telling us scholarship progresses where the scholars disagree. If there is disagreement, scholarship is in progress. These are my two reasons why I appreciate this question. Let me come to the answers. If I understood the question right, should cost benefit analysis decide this aspect of one nation, one election? I'm with you on this. Cost benefit analysis should not decide whether we should go for it or not. I would also agree with you that whether voter fatigue should be a consideration. On this point also, I am with you. If we can have so many holidays, we can enjoy so much. Why not go vote 5 times? As a responsible citizen. Are we responsible citizens of the 5 votes? Do we vote one? Rather, that needs to be addressed than taking care of the voter fatigue. However, yet I support the move for my own reasons. Like you see, cost benefit analysis is one thing. We are only looking at the monetary loss. There is absolute, what was otherwise quoted as indirect loss. That is what we should be worried about. How much of governance fails, how much of administration fails, how much time even us people end up spending, starting from policymakers till the administrators at the floor level. These are the aspects to be considered. These aspects in a way justify this move according to me. And so far as voter fatigue is concerned, let's be honest. If 5 times voting is reduced down to 1 time, what is going to the voting rate in Bengaluru? This is a question to be thought about. If 5 times is reduced down to 1 time, that will increase the voting rate to 90%. I am fine. But I am doubtful. Rather, we should address this concern on a different note. This is unfortunately and ironically the problem not of the literates but of the educated. It's not of the illiterates, it's of the illiterates and educated. Some other thing needs to be done to address this very thing. These are my observations on the question. Thank you. I think there is no scope for follow-up question. You do that.
Thank you for the insights on the one nation, one election. My question is that there is a political challenges, there is an economical challenges. What about the psychological challenges, like human basis, like when choosing? What about the psychological challenges when the citizen faces when choosing a state party or state election and central election? Because there should be citizens should be given the double opportunity for the accountability of the parties at the state level and the central level. Because psychological aspect is very much necessary in choosing the parties. So, what is your thought on this psychological challenges?
You are partly true. You are partly true. Yes. Because in every state there will be a sect of people who will be saying we should be given an opportunity. Whenever the opportunity comes to elect the people, we elect it. So in such a situation, it is 100% right. Just because a few of them say, or just 1/3 of them say, we cannot hold it waste the money if their request can be asked. That is another thing. That has to be judged impartially before a decision of this effect is taken. See, there are plenty of elections which have taken place, and most of the elections which have held at the regional level in the south as well as the northeast, and especially in this side, in our south, based on the factors which you suggest. And these issues surface overnight also. Just because it comes in, it will not remain forever. It will disappear. There are many issues which have been raised, and at times it is considered a major issue, and those issues are not permitted to us as of today. All factors have to be taken. We have to take into consideration progress and prosperity of everyone. Suppose, for example, people are working in the private institutions, private,
and actually, the elections this time, at least from the declaration result till the election result, 4 or 5 days are lost for them. They are not able to go to the office because buses are not available. And they are go to elections. They go from the place to the camp where elections are held. And in such a situation, remember what we call it, the difficulties that are being faced by them. The salaries that are being cut for no reason. And the marginal salary that they get, suppose for example a laborer in Bangalore will be getting 1,600 to 1,000 rupees. And if it is stopped for 4 days, what will happen to him? These factors will go into it. And should we take up these issues? Just because war hawks, the society? We agree with you. But then if it is a major issue, it can be done, it can be accepted. But otherwise, I don't think it is
Sir, as you mentioned, there is a huge economic burden, resource burden while conducting the foundation, multiple elections, different. That is why we are
that is not the only reason. See, if you have heard, there are several other factors and reasons which are attributed to this. First one is the society should function regularly, except on government holidays and other holidays which are declared by the institution. On other days, you should be in a position to give service to the nation. And if you are working in the private, you should be able to work out a salary. That leads to economic growth. That makes you to buy the product. Market economy will progress. There are so many other things which are being treated. Don't be only one factor. Along with the money.
Thank you, sir. One last question for Rajshekar, sir. Sir, actually, while you saying, sir, there is no relation between election and federalism. Like, what are the main supporting points of there is no relation between election and federalism? How, sir? How there is no relation between election and federalism? Sorry, sir. For Rajshekar, sir, please.
I mean, federal structure has nothing to do with the date of elections or elections being conducted simultaneously, say, parliamentary, legislature, and state leaders. Federal setup is, see, an argument is now sort of a narrative is being given that federal structure is in danger. I feel one fails to understand how exactly this shall be a reason for the purpose of, I mean to say, one nation, one election. There is good justification. No, these are all one-liners. Federal structure is under danger. How exactly federal structure is in danger? That question itself is beyond comprehension, like you said. That's precisely what I said. Let us not disrespect the intelligence of our voters. Our voters are definitely much more intelligent while choosing who to be chosen for, say, parliamentary legislature, and for example, who to be elected for state legislature. So that shall let us not demean our voters. See, like Sir Scientist said, we always say this mechanism, what is being thought of, it's for the future. We should get ready for future. Have we not gotten ourselves ready for AI? Are we not getting ready for AI? We are tuning up ourselves. What happened when computers got introduced? Did we not get ready for, say, the computers for that matter? Now the situation is that we need to get ready, give ourselves a system, give ourselves a mechanism, give ourselves that kind of a setup where we are in a work mode, not in an election mode all the time. Election is just like what's happening in any discipline for that matter. It's happening in sports. No training, only tournaments. What's the reason? That's the very simplistic example which can be thought of. So I always keep saying, Let us give it a try. Unless and until it is tested, of course, lot of thought process, lot of deliberations happen at highest level by intellects and persons who are at the helm of affairs who know all these aspects. They have given this. For us to understand this, my dear good friend, read the report. If you read the report, you will be a transformed person altogether. Much insight will be sort of, we will get into that kind of an insight where most of our doubts will get cleared by this. That's my humble opinion, and I believe this should answer your inquiries and doubts if any. Yes.
Due to time restrictions, I request.
Last question. My request is, if it is the same kind of question, please don't have it. It is something not supposed to be
So, my question is, sir, when you are conducting election simultaneously, national party might have a larger fund, and the local regional party might have less or limited fund. So, won't it suppress the regional party and regional concern?
Now, see, the fund in terms of election management, you are saying?
Yes, I mean, reaching out to the every individual. It's easier for the big party to reach people than compared to the regional or local or small parties.
I would say other way around. The regional parties are better focused if they do the elections together, because every year if they are doing an election, where do they get the money from? The national parties, as you are saying, if they have more money, they have money to do 100 elections. But whereas the smaller parties, where they represent lesser number of this thing, if you are put them to go back to voters again and again to campaign, how do they bring in mobilize, mop up the resources?
That is the concern. So if national party has ability to conduct 100 elections and they are putting all their resources, everything in one election, so doesn't this suppress?
See, well, now if you see, there is a lot of transparency is being brought into how the election needs to be conducted, what are the reserves that is available with the political parties, everything is put forward in the public domain. And I think the courts are also specifically monitoring all of this. If there is any undue advantages being taken up by any bigger political party, having capacity to mobilize and kind of try to destabilize all these smaller political parties, there is a way that these regional parties have already voiced their opinion. But surprisingly, more than 50% of the regional parties have accepted for donation election. This is because they think they have more chance to actually survive in the political landscape if these elections happen and they are done with it, then they can go back and their cadres can do their what they want. Otherwise, for a smaller political party, it's the same person who is doing election again and again. So that actually handicaps them a lot. Regarding the mobilization of money in terms of how much money is there with the national party, how much money is there with the smaller party, I think the smaller parties, the area of operation is very, very limited. Some political party don't even cross more than 2 Lok Sabha members. If you see Apna Dal and some of these parties in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, their limitation is to 2 assemblies, I mean 2 Lok Sabha constituencies. Those are the smallest parties, but they still win elections. So I don't think that bias would be there, or it should disrupt the whole process of bigger political parties come with bigger money bags and they kind of take away the whole thing. As we already spoken, the voter is so very judicious in making a decision that the right person should be their representative. I think that has prevailed earlier and that's going to prevail later as well.
I request everyone to list out your answers and we receive the same and pose the same question to our dignitaries. Thank you, dignitaries, for enlightening us for most of the
Just a quick response. You see, if you are looking at economic resources that will make the parties resign, etc. That's a good thing to happen in a way. Because after this reform, the next important electoral reform that has to happen in this country is about owning less money and winning more hearts.
I have a request to all of you. I mean, many of you have really some valid, very important questions, and you have, you have a lot of things that are running on your mind right now. Kindly go to a website called onoe.gov.in. It's a website. It's by the government of India. You can read all the articles, all the submissions that have been made by the committee, the bill that has been tabled in the parliament, the provisions in the constitution. What are the provisions? You can set your own remark. You can also make your own comment. You can put in your resolution. And I would request our principal sir, if because that is what we have been doing in most of the other law colleges, please put up a competition like an essay or something, or they can pass a resolution, they can be for, they can be against, anything can happen, and you can voice your own opinion. And once that is complete, kindly sign and send it to the President of this country, Honorable Draupadi Murmuji. You can send your college resolution that we as a college, we convene together and we have to come to this opinion that our country needs this or we don't need this. I mean, option because it's a popular choice. So you can do that. And kindly go to, there's a QR code, I think that's been put at the screen. If you can scan, there will be a lot of other information that is available digitally. You can explore that, and you can decide on, probably creating something out of this whole, seminar.
Thank you, dignitaries, for enlightening us with your answer. Hope most of us received a wider perspective on nation, one election. I now request Mr. Kushal Pawar, Assistant Professor of Law, to kindly deliver the oath of thanks on behalf of KLE Law College, Bengaluru.
Respected Chief Guests, distinguished dignitaries, esteemed faculty members, dear students, and everyone gathered here today. On behalf of KLE Law College, it is my profound honor to propose the vote of thanks and this meaningful occasion of Sanviধান Divas. First and foremost, we express our deepest gratitude to our respected chief guest, Shri S. Rajeshwar sir. I will request Siddhi Subin ma'am to give a token of gratitude to him. We also express our gratitude to Dr. Professor T.R. Subramanian sir. I will request Vishnu Prasad sir to give a token of gratitude to sir. We extend our heartfelt thanks to our guest of honor, Shri A. Naveen sir also. I request Kanika ma'am to give a token of gratitude to sir. Our sincere thanks to our beloved principal sir to support us, to encourage us to do such kind of activities. Extend our special thanks to our faculty coordinator, Delta ma'am, and IQAC coordinator, Manu sir also, for their planning and coordination for this. To our audience, students, faculties, and guests, thank you for your active participation, your thoughtful questions, and the enthusiasm of your brought to this particular gathering. As we commemorate the Sanviಧಾન Divas, may we carry forward the spirit of our Constitution with responsibility, awareness, and commitment to renovate India. Thank you again, all of you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. As we conclude today's event, I request everyone to kindly raise the national anthem, a symbol of our unity and pride of the society.
Last but not least.
अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
बोलो भारत माता की
जय।
A QR code has been circulated among the students. Upon scanning it, will include a Google form. The same will be sent. I request all the students to stay back. I request all the volunteers to join our groups on the dais below. I request all the students to stay in the
Students, motherfucker.
I request all the students to take back, to stay back. I request all the students to take back, to stay back. The teachers will take your attendance.
काम आप दो कैसे करने आज ऐसे होते जैसे भारत